So we are cracking on with our exotics breakdown. Today we're looking at rifles as well as MMRs. So let's just get straight into it. First off is Merciless and Ruthless. These are both exotic AKMs. They come with binary trigger. The weapon fires on trigger pull and release. If both bullets hit the target, gain a stack. At 7 stacks, shooting the enemy deals 500% amplified damage and creates a 7 meter explosion, dealing 500% weapon damage, consuming the stacks. Secondary attribute is 9.5 critical hit chance, optic is 10% accuracy, magazine 10% reload speed, muzzle 10% stability, underbarrel 10% weapon handling. This weapon is actually nuts. Like, in terms of like mathematical DPS, it's insane. Like, it's actually a little bit bonkers. On the 7th stack, the target you hit will take 500% amplified damage. The explosion will do 500% weapon damage in a 7 meter radius. The explosion itself is actually quite weak. It's not that powerful, but the target you hit for 500% amplified is just crazy. It will do so much damage. In fact, if we calculate the burst DPS and just equate one explosion in, it will outperform a classic M1A, one of our favourite top tier rifles, by over 25%. And that's just calculating one explosion. Assuming you are accurate to fuck, you can get 4 explosions per mag. This will allow you to do over double. It's a 136% increase in DPS over the M1A. One slight problem though, good luck hitting anything. This is assuming they are both operating on the same build, under the same conditions. There's just one glaring issue. The Merciless has the recoil of a middle-aged white woman with a camera phone, or Karen. As such, to even get this weapon remotely usable, we either have to stack a metric ton of weapon handling, or we have to sacrifice our chest talent for the talent braced. This is about the only time I have found that talent to be worthwhile. However, it kind of does make for a decent, fun meme build that is able to clear heroic content. It is a complete joke, however, it can do it. A while ago, a very long time ago, I was actually running around with a Striker's Merciless build with weapon handling everywhere. It did work, it was fun. Though it soon dawned on me that everything I think I'm doing with the Merciless, I can just put an AR on and do the exact same thing 3 times faster, simply just because I'm sacrificing so much damage just for the privilege of firing this damn weapon. I personally really like Merciless. It was one of the meta rifles back in days yonder, simply because of a secondary talent it had on it, which was passive. You just had to have it on you and it would always work. Completely forgotten what it even did. However, the weapon itself was so much more accurate than what it is now. So I would love to be able to sit here and tell you, just hang on to it. Like, eventually they'll come round, they'll rework this weapon, and it will be god tier yet again. However, I doubt that. So for the moment, because they're not exactly rare drops, I'm going to say they make a very nice exotic component. I have kept hold of one just because I really want it. I really want it. But it's so bad. It really is. Up next we have Le Diamondback, an exotic 1886. Talent is Agonizing Bite. Diamondback randomly marks an enemy. Hitting the enemy consumes the mark, guaranteeing a critical hit and amplifying damage of that hit by 20%. After hitting the marked targets, all shots fired are guaranteed critical hits for 5 seconds. A new random enemy is marked afterwards, or whenever you reload. Secondary attribute is 10% headshot, optics 10% accuracy, magazine 10% reload, muzzle 15% critical hit damage, and underbarrel is 10% stability. I personally have a love-hate relationship with this because so many times the enemy it marks is a damn controller or drone bitch or some ammo prick who just sprints 10 million miles away and then sits there and does nothing, and I have to take a pot shot at something, reload, to mark another enemy, and lo and behold, it's the same bastard 10 million miles away. So I end up just being able to completely not be able to use the damn talent, at which point I am just better off using an 1886 because it will just be so much better. I like to refer to this weapon as the praying mantis. You never know whether you're going to have the best sex of your life or if she's going to eat your fucking head off. Mathematically though, it's probably the most perfect weapon in the game. It can guarantee crits. Everything will be a crit. Add in something like Negotiator's Dilemma and you're away. However, we are assuming we're able to play perfectly with the talent and basically have 100% uptime on our crits, which means we can put the rest of our damage into things like headshot, critical hit damage and a variety of other multipliers. It is a absolutely beautiful weapon. I don't like the way it looks, but mathematically it's god tier. Using it, not so much. This weapon shines in a variety of different circumstances, particularly with things like Negotiator's Dilemma, such as the Dark Hours boss Boomer. You are able to circumvent his immunity phases through the use of things like Negotiators, just because of how Negotiators work. Now add in something like Diamondback and guarantee that everything is a critical hit. Yeah, you're able to get through Boomer pretty damn easily. This is the same for a lot of enemies. You can just completely forego a lot of mechanics, a lot of wafty bollocks, a lot of running around. Oh no, that guy's hiding, I can't kill him. Joke's on you, I've marked him with Negotiator's Dilemma. I'll just shoot this random thing over here and transfer the crit. Problem solved. Now, due to the mechanics behind Diamondback, it's kind of very difficult to directly compare this to any other weapon, simply because no other weapon can guarantee 100% critical hit chance. So you end up in this weird little power vacuum of where Diamondback is literally the only thing that can do what Diamondback does. It takes a minute to get used to though. Up next we have Dr. Holm, calling Dr. Holm. It's an M1A CQB rifle and the talent is very originally called Dr. Holm. Shooting an enemy with the weapon will apply a mark for 5 seconds. The rest of the description here is wrong. It's been changed. This has not been updated. When the enemy dies, while marked, it will repair your armor and your allies' armor for 10% of your maximum armor. This cannot provide bonus armor. Secondary attribute is 10% damage to targets out of cover. Optic is 10% accuracy. Magazine is 10% reload speed. Muzzle is 10% stability. And underbarrel is 10% handling. Now this weapon caused a lot of contention when it came out, and it's mostly just because people can't read. At base, this is the highest DPS rifle in the game. If you just compare its base stats, it is the highest DPS rifle in the game. The M1A CQB is the second highest. Despite the fact that this is a exotic version of the M1A CQB, for some very bizarre reason, Dr. Holm has a 350 RPM where an M1A CQB has 320. Don't know why, they just do. Even when you calculate the rest of the build, the weapon talent, M1A CQB with Rifleman, etc, this is still in third place. It literally ends up being stage left with Sledgehammer active, then an M1A CQB with Rifleman, for example, then Dr. Holm. It is still one of the top tier rifles in the game, and it provides healing for you and your team. It is incredibly powerful. For damage, you will still be better off using a classic M1A or an M1A CQB, just because of how easy they are to use with the amount of damage that they can potentially put out. That being said, Dr. Holm is still a top tier contender for a meta weapon, even before the changes or the nerf that they made. It is incredibly powerful. In fact, the only argument I will hear as to why people don't like this weapon is because it forces you to scope in. And the only reason I will hear that one is because I am in the same boat. It is an incredibly powerful, incredibly useful, top tier DPS weapon that essentially has a team-wide preservation on it. It just forces you to scope in. Other than that, it is absolutely an amazing weapon, and it fits beautifully into so many builds. Now we have Ravenous. This is an exotic SIG 716. The talent is Geri and Freki. On trigger pull, both barrels fire at once. When fired from the right shoulder, hits add an offensive primer. When fired from the left shoulder, hits add a defensive primer. Hits from one shoulder will detonate the opposite shoulder's primers when present. When detonated or the affected enemy is killed, each offensive primer deals 100% weapon damage, while each defensive primer grants 4% bonus armor and amplifies weapon damage to armor plates for 5 seconds. Primer effectiveness is doubled at 10 stacks. Secondary attribute is damage to targets out of cover. Optic is 5% critical hit chance. Magazine 10% reload. Muzzle 10% stability. Underbarrel is 5% critical hit damage. This weapon gets a very bad rap, simply just because after playing with this weapon for half an hour, you think you've just tried to wank yourself to death due to the amount of carpal tunnel you have. It is absolutely annoying to play. No arguments here. But what if I told you that this weapon is actually technically, theoretically, the highest DPS in the game? It is the only weapon that is able to breach that 40 million DPS mark. Bit weird, huh? Now admittedly it can only do this due to the simple fact of it has an amplifier as well as an additive damage bonus in the talent itself. The offensive stacks are additive, the defensive stacks are essentially an amplifier. They can do some wondrous things when paired together, assuming you are shooting the right target. Chungers, Warhounds, some shields, LMG dudes, helmet, or any helmet really. It's very niche, but what it allows you to do with them is absolutely insane. It is niche to all hell, and there's not too much point in running it in the open world, but if you know how to use this weapon, especially the environments it can be used in, this weapon is God. It is just actively, it's not God tier, it is God. Now we have reason number 7 as to why I'm heavily medicated. Its talent is reason number 8 why I'm heavily medicated. Tags enemies when scoped, maximum of 10 targets. Killing any marked target with a headshot applies a 10-second burn status effect that gives a 50% or 20% in PvP speed movement decrease to all other targets. The cooldown for this is 30 seconds. Killing another enemy with a headshot shortens the cooldown by 10 seconds. Targets are marked after 1 second in the scope. The attachments, secondary is random, we can re-roll this one. Optic, 20% headshot damage, magazine is 10% headshot damage, muzzle is 20% optimal range, and underbarrel is 20% stability. Unlike the person who designed this weapon, they are clearly not stable. So, about this weapon, it makes a nice exotic component. Dread Edict, moving on swiftly. This is an exotic SVD, its talent is full stop. Shooting enemies builds stacks to a cap of 20. Headshots grant 2 stacks. Each stack grants 2% weapon damage and 5% headshot damage. On reload, clear all stacks and gain 5% bonus armor as temporary armor for 10 seconds for each stack removed. Headshot kills with Dread Edict restore all of the bullets in the magazine. This does not count as a reload. Secondary attribute is 10% damage to targets out of cover. Optic is 40% headshot. Magazine is 15% weapon handling, muzzle is 10% critical hit chance, and underbarrel is 10% stability. This weapon annoys me for 2 reasons. One, it's an exotic SVD. SVDs used to be OP and the go-to DPS weapon a long time ago. Now they're pretty damn terrible. Second reason it annoys me is this is the perfect example of an exotic weapon done right, but for the wrong damn class. If you put this talent on Eagle Bearer, we would have a new best in slot AR. If you put this talent on Backfire, we would have a new best in slot SMG. If we put this talent on literally anything other than an SVD, we would have a new best in slot. It is that damn powerful. The talent itself offers a maximum of 40% weapon damage and 100% headshot damage. It also allows us to refill the magazine from no cost of our ammo pool, as well as the fact that on reload we're able to give ourselves bonus armor for 10 seconds. This is an incredibly incredibly powerful talent. The problem is the weapon. Now, that being said, it's not like this weapon is actually dead. If you were, for some bizarre reason, going to make a DPS MMR build, this literally is the only weapon worth running on it. It is very powerful. The problem is, why would you run a DPS MMR build when things like Headhunter exists? If you literally removed Headhunter from the equation, as in Headhunter wouldn't exist in the game anymore, Dread Edict with Aces would literally be one of the top tier DPS / MMR builds going. It's just a shame that there's no point running DPS MMRs anymore. Nemesis, as I like to call it, Big Boomstick. Electromagnetic Accelerator is its talent. It's an exotic AWM which we don't even have in the game, so it's a completely standalone weapon within its series. Anyway, the talent, shots fired deal 0 to 100% weapon damage based on how long the trigger is held before releasing. The shot is actually fired on release, not on press. Secondary attribute is 9.5 critical hit chance. Optic is 45% headshot damage, magazine 10% reload, muzzle 5% critical hit damage, and underbarrel is 5% weapon handling. Shot for shot, the only thing that beats this thing is the TAC 50. This thing is a absolute monster and is generally a pretty solid go-to for a lot of MMR users. The only real complaint against it, well, there's two. One, some of its attributes and attachments make zero sense. It's a headshot monster. It's an MMR. Secondary attribute, 9.5% crit chance. Are we sure game? And then the muzzle with 5% critical hit damage. Again, are we sure? Like, what is this? The second problem that a lot of people, including myself, have with it is where I suck at aiming, having to pop out of cover to hold the trigger down to charge the shot at something while being shot back is kind of a problem. This weapon is very much a top tier weapon for top tier skill based players that are able to utilize this weapon. It will 100% of the time pretty much outperform things such as the next one on this list and pretty much every other MMR minus the TAC 50 unless you're shooting a named elite. Up next and last we have Mantis, which is an exotic SRSA1. The talent is in plain sight. Your scope view displays additional information about the enemy not targeting you. Orange equals not targeting you, red equals you're going to get shot. Your scope view highlights enemy weak points. Headshot and weak point damage against enemies not targeting you is amplified by 50%. Headshot kills reset the cooldown of your decoy skill. The bonus will wait until your current decoy goes on cooldown if currently active. Secondary attribute is damage to targets out of cover. Optic is 40% headshot. Magazine 10% reload. Muzzle 5% crit chance. Why? Underbarrel 10% stability. This is another favourite among some decent MMR players, however they all seem to have the same issue with it. The talent only really works if you are in fact running decoy. Don't get me wrong, decoy is incredibly powerful, but if you like to mix it up a bit, add a bit more utility or just change a few things around, Mantis does not allow you to do so. In order to get the talent to actively work, especially in solo, you really do need the decoy. In terms of scaling, it does work pretty well in solo. I've seen people try to take this thing into legendary. They only get about halfway before they get absolutely bent over, and no one liked the outcome. Minus, of course, the white tusk who always come in. Why do you think their uniforms are white? This is not a bad weapon. It really isn't. It just struggles because we've got things like Nemesis to compare it to. Overall performance of this weapon though is pretty brilliant. Some people like it, some people don't. I personally don't like it, mainly because I suck with MMRs, but the actual reason behind it, like mechanically, is I find the weird little highlights for its weak points and its heads very distracting, especially considering there are a few areas, or if the weather turns, you can't actually discern as to whether you're aiming at the head or if you're aiming at a wall and someone's head is behind it. It doesn't give you that level of information. It's amazing the information it does give you, but it's like the basics that it should give just aren't actually present. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully it's going to provide some useful information for a lot of players. The next one is going to be pistols, and then I'm going to finish it off with a lovely tier list, channeling my inner YouTuber. Have fun, good luck, don't die, it's bad for the health.